Shit's Gone Sideways.
All right. Welcome back to another episode of Shit's Gone Sideways. I'm here with comedian Edan Mcgovern. Hello, Edan.
Hey,
So, thanks for coming on.
thanks for having me. I'm
Okay.
very excited.
I'm excited too. You are actually the first female that I've had on the podcast. I was like, there's too many goddamn dudes with hectic stories. I need to find some females with some shit that's gone sideways. So, a lot of the guys that I've had on so far, I have known a fair bit of their story in advance and kind of been able to plan out a bunch of questions. But this is another one of those stories that I'm flying blind, which I'm also excited about because it means I don't have to worry about looking at my notes to see what bits we need to cover off. So today we're going to be just going through your crazy stories, and I'm just going to throw questions at you whenever things come to my mind.
Sweet.
Cool. So, I mean, where should we begin? Where do you want to start your crazy story?
God, there's a lot. So, yeah. So, members of my family have been, involved in the biz.
The crime biz?
The biz?
Yeah.
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 And, I didn't
How
have...
many family members are we talking?
Oh, just two.
Okay.
Just two.
But which family members are these?
My dad and my sister's dad.
Okay.
Yeah.
All right.
So we've got different dads, but we've sort of all grown up together. Their dad had 7 kids with 5 different women or something.
He was
So-
busy. Yeah.
Yeah, Yeah.
Yeah.
The women all stayed the same age. He just got
Yeah.
older.
So it's just all the dodgy blokes in your family.
Mm-hmm.
All right.
He was sort of semi-successful until he wasn't.
Mhm.
And then he went to jail for I think 10 years. My dad, so I hear, it was sort of before my time that the actual crime was happening. He was dealing, I think, heroin. I assume, maybe cocaine as well.
Yeah.
And I don't know.
So who did you grow up with? Your dad? Your dad?
My dad.
Yeah.
Yeah. So, yeah, I lived in between my mum's and my dad's houses sporadically. It always was chopping and changing because dad was, sort of in and out of rehabs or, depending on if I didn't rat him out when I knew he wasn't doing well because he was really fun.
You
He's
didn't
the
rat him
fun
out
parent.
to the rest of the family, to your mum.
Yeah, they weren't together, ever.
I just want to make sure we're not talking about ratting out to the cops, right? Because,
No.
snitches get stitches.
No. He was very anti-snitch
Yeah,
parent,
yeah.
as soon as I
Well,
was...
as he would be, right, as a crim.
Yeah, absolutely.
So whereabouts did you grow up?
Everywhere. So first,
Sydney?
Sydney.
Yeah.
And then sort of everywhere around Sydney. Bondi. And it feels funny to say Bondi to people that don't understand what Bondi was like then.
Yeah.
We lived housing commission beachfront,
Wow.
which is crazy because now it's influencer paradise. But it was pretty dodgy back then. I think it was a lot of everyone in our building was insane.
Yeah.
And drug addicts.
This is in the late 90s? How old are you?
I'm 24.
Okay.
So it was early 2000s.
Early 2000s. Okay,
Yeah.
cool.
It was it was pretty fun. It was insane. It was so on the bottom floor of our apartment building, it was so my dad's best friend Ollie, who was insane. I'd see him, cold sweats, locked himself out naked every day. I'd be like, my God. Me and my dad.
What, because he was just cooked all the time?
all the time.
Yeah.
All the time. Me and my dad in a studio apartment, and then a lady who pretended to be a mermaid. She had
She dressed up like a mermaid?
yep, she did. She dressed up like a mermaid. She had fluoro orange dreadlocks down to her knees, and she'd put a mermaid tail on, and she'd hang out.
So
at
she's
the
like a
beach.
Rastafarian Ariel.
Mm-hmm.
That's a vibe.
So that's what we were
and would
working
she go
with.
get in the water?
Yeah.
Holy
Yeah.
shit.
She thought she'd sit down by the rocks, I guess. She was really, really insane.
Wow.
And I remember my dad and Ollie used to be like, God, that woman's crazy. God, that woman's crazy. I'd be like, you guys are
crazy.
heroin addicts.
Yeah.
You guys are crazy.
Yeah.
She is dressing up like a mermaid. She is probably about 40 years old, but it's not looking much better for the rest of us.
It's a spectrum, right? Craziness.
Yeah. Yeah, if you're not mermaid crazy, you are junkie crazy.
Yeah.
You got to
There's different
pick the
shades of
worst.
craziness.
Yeah, pick the better of two evils.
Yeah. So, how old were you at this stage?
It would have been 5,
Okay.
6.
I was 6.
And yeah.
Your parents, so your mum and your dad weren't together at that age, but were they ever together?
I assume so. At
Yeah,
one point
yeah,
they
yeah,
were
yeah.
for 20 minutes max, I reckon. I could not imagine them in the same room. Yeah, they weren't together when I was born, really.
Okay.
But yeah, so I was staying sort of half and half. I was staying in Manly with mum at that point, but then Bondi with dad.
Fuck, that's a bit of a mission.
Yeah,
Yeah.
a lot of carpools happening.
Yeah.
And it would always be like McDonald's car parks, like jump in one car, out the other car. There's no chat.
Oh, wow.
No.
Just like a drug deal,
Yeah.
right? But
Yeah, well-
the baby offload.
Seasoned pro. Basically, he also like was so upfront. He never hid anything from me. I think he thought I was like a big grown up person in a little person's body, because I remember I would have been like 5, 6, 7, and in the car with him, he'd be like, "Listen, if you ever need to hide money really, really quickly, in the freezer, there's like the section that you can pull the rubber back. It's got all the like back in like a kind of older freezers, I guess, where it had the pictures of how long you should freeze things for." And he's like, "Behind there, you can put money there. They never look there." And I was like, "I'm 6.
Yeah. Yeah. When is this going to become practical information?
You've taken my pocket money. Like,
Give me at least another.
what money?"
I need at least another 10 years before this information is going to start to be useful, right?
Yeah. I was like, I'm eating solely off like IOUs at the school canteen. What
cash?
funds am I obtaining and then hiding?
No cash here.
Yeah.
Me, cash, no.
Yeah.
Robbo.
Yeah. It's pretty insane. Yeah. And like very much
What other kind of shit was he saying to you at that age that was just gnarly?
everything. It was insane.
Was he talking to you about drugs at that stage?
Well, absolutely.
Yeah.
He'd always be like, "Don't you get into drugs?" And I was like, "What are you like? I'm 5.
Yeah.
I'm little. I don't know how."
Fuck. Was he using drugs like out in the open then?
On and off,
Yeah.
not out in the open. It was always very hidden from me, but I was like very switched on. Half of it I knew, and I think I was like, "I'm going to turn a blind eye because I don't want to not see you." And
But you could obviously tell he was when he was affected.
well, yeah,
Yeah.
there was a series of overdoses throughout my life, and
Where you found him overdosed?
yes,
Yeah.
sometimes.
Oh.
And
What was the youngest age that you were when that happened?
probably like 7
Fuck,
when I was
that's-
there.
that's
But like
insane.
we'd have full like arguments, and it's only now that I'm older that I look back and I go like, "Oh my god, he was talking to a child." Like we'd have arguments where I'd be like, "You're using." Like could you, a 6-year-old looking at you saying, "You're using"?
That's,
Like
that's not
it's
something
ridiculous.
that
They
you
shouldn't know how to.
should've-
They shouldn't say it like that.
No, but I mean, it's crazy that you had to go through that at a time when you probably still believed in fucking Santa and the Tooth Fairy or some bullshit.
Well, that's the thing. I was a very disillusioned kid because of him.
Yeah.
I went to school and I said, "Santa isn't real. Also, your parents all had sex." And then I got called into the principal's office,
Fuck.
and they were like, "These are really grown-up things." And I was like, "Yeah, you don't know the half of what I know.
Yeah.
I'm talking about some really grown-up things. You should see what I didn't tell them."
Yeah, I know where to hide money.
Yeah.
Right?
I was
Fuck.
like, yeah. So
I know where to get heroin on a fucking Tuesday
Like-
at midday. You're like, fucking, let's not worry about me telling the kids about Santa, you
I was
know?
like, yeah, they've still got a bit to go, I reckon. I reckon they're still maintaining some innocence. Yeah, it was pretty intense, and like, it was just insane. We'd go to like, all these places like, the Tropicana and stuff, and be talking to all these people that were still, in the business, and we'd go for weekend trips to see, his friends. He'd be like, one of my friends, he's got a property out somewhere, and he's got a horse, and it's a really fancy house, and the horses had a baby. You love horses, and I was like 7-year-old girl, so I was like, yeah, that's awesome. And then I remember we went out there, and it was amazing, amazing property, and we were living in like squalor. Like we had like a TV on top of cardboard boxes. When you pull the photos off the wall, there's just cockroaches stuck to the inside of them, like filth.
What kind of food were you eating at that stage?
Oh, sushi. Only sushi.
Sushi?
Sushi. Dine and dash from any sushi place
What?
in Sydney. We'd just go,
Fuck.
we'd sit down. He'd say, like, show them your little song and dance you're doing at school, and then we'd just get out of there.
Oh my God, that's real fucking
Yeah.
junky moves.
Oh, yeah.
Fucking hell. And you're getting put through that at 7.
Well, I was,
Yeah.
as far as I was concerned, it was awesome. Because I was like, Mum, that makes me eat all this boring stuff, and I have to go to bed. And like we can't just do whatever we want. And Dad will wake up one morning and be like, I know a good playground in Albury Wodonga, get in the car.
Wow.
Or Dad will surprise me and pick me up from school when it's supposed to be Mum's day to pick me up, and we'll just go to another town.
Yeah, so it kind of, you've got your blinkers on for just like how crazy this behavior is, because it's like it's fun and you feel a bit free, I guess.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
There was like, I remember one night he took me to the like night screening of the King Kong remake, which is a 3-hour movie, and we went at 9 p.m. This is back when you like the parking like toll machines were like you put coins in them, and someone had to be there to operate it, and it was so late at I think like I don't know where it was. I think it was Warringah Mall or something, because he would have been maybe dropping me back to Mum's, and there was we couldn't get out of the car park. He probably also didn't pay. And so he's like looking around. We're like, well, there's no one here. It's like, 9, 10, 11, 12, like midnight at Warringah Mall. Like, what do we do? And he was like, have you got your belt on? And I was like, yeah. And he just backs it up. We just go directly through the boom gate. Like, there was no sense of
smashed the boom gate off?
Yeah, straight off.
Out.
In like the oldest car I've ever seen that was completely rusted, and when it rained we had to hold the roof up.
Yeah.
Like there was no sense of it. This is a bit insane.
It sounds like have you seen that like Facebook meme page called like low income single dad cars?
Yeah.
It sounds exactly
That's
like one
exactly what it was. It was awesome. And he sort of had so many ways of getting around the shortcomings, I guess, that we have. It's why I have a lot of good memories associated with him. Is like we'd come, we'd go to the methadone clinic after he got out of hospital. And then, he'd probably be on some other stuff at the same time as picking up his methadone, and he'd be like, darling, I'm going to teach you how to drive a manual. It's very important. You do the gears. And he'd be like, in the car. And I'd be like, shifting gears. And in my head, I go, that's really cool. And I look back on it now, I go,
this is insane behavior.
This is a really crazy thing to do.
Yeah, I guess, he was so used to living this life that he had all these kind of loopholes and ways to improvise, right? But tell me what were you saying about the horses? Right?
Oh, yes, sorry. So and like looked at this amazing house, and we took photos everywhere because I'd never been in a house this amazing before, and me with all of me in the big split staircase, my dad also talked a lot of shit. Like he just really could not shut up for the life of him, and so he's talking to everyone.
Was he funny at least?
Yeah, hilarious. Yeah. So funny. But like also when he walks into the room, you go like, okay, here we go.
Yeah, fuck.
You almost want to tell him to shut up before he started talking.
Yeah. It's going to be a bit draining.
Oh, yeah. It's going to be a lot. It's going to be great, but you're going to be like, oh, can I do this today? So, he's talking everyone's ear off about, how great this house is, blah, blah, blah. We're taking photos everywhere. Anyway, I think, like, word got around that Marty Pierce turns up to a house, this, like, rich person's house, and starts taking photos of everything. They were like, oh, he's going to rob them. So I remember being involved, I guess, in an interaction where a bunch of people turned up and basically like staunched him, and they were like, what the fuck is going on?
Because he had robbed them, or because they thought he was
going to?
They
thought he was like scoping it out to, maybe give to someone else. Just, like, I guess taking photos of this place to like, figure out security reasons or like valued items and stuff. Because every nice sculpture, I'm like next to it. It's all photos of me.
But
like
were these
being
people that are friends of your dad or friends of like the person who owned the house? Because why do they care if they're friends with him? Why do they care about if he's going to rob the house?
Both, but these old guys, these old crims, they become little old ladies. They start getting real gossipy, real catty about things. And I remember like,
can't be doing that, mate. That's wrong.
Yeah. They were like, well, what business do you have here? And he was like, my kid likes horses. And I remember them, it's quite an adult conversation there. It's quite, I guess, scary looking back at it. I wasn't as scared as I should have been because I didn't know that could be potentially an awful situation. I remember trying to talk to them and being like, guys, listen, because my dad thought I was a grown-up. I thought I was a grown-up. So I just talked to grown-ups like, listen, we'll figure this out. It doesn't have to, we don't have to be all hostile like this. And they were like, why is the kid talking to me?
Yeah.
Shut the kid up. What are you doing here? You shouldn't know about any of
part of this conversation at all.
I was like, I was almost more like diplomatic than he was.
But now looking back, I mean, it sounds very much like your dad was probably going to rob the place.
I don't know. I think no. I don't think he was involved in any
No?
crime when I was around. I don't think he had his life together enough to
Yeah.
do that because
Yeah,
he always used to ask when we'd be in Toys R Us, and I'd be like, I want that, and he'd be like, if you'd let me start selling drugs, and I'd say, no, because what if you get caught? Then you can't buy me any toys.
Yeah, fuck.
So it was
That's a weird
at the end of the day, it was up to
conversation
me.
having with a kid.
Mhm.
Yeah, but yeah, obviously he had his demons and his struggles, but at the same time he was trying to do his best, I guess. Yeah.
That is pretty funny. Like exactly, it was kind of only confronting afterwards. At the time, everyone was like, "Oh, she seems sort of well adjusted," and I was like, "Yeah." I mean, everything was explained to me. It wasn't like it came as a shock of one day I had this normal life and then all of a sudden something terrible happened. I was like,
you ease into it from a very young age.
yeah. They're like, your dad's in hospital. And I'm like, that doesn't shock me. He super glues his teeth back in.
Yeah.
He's in a bad way all the time. I know.
Do you think that that's had long-lasting positive impacts on you as a person, or negative, or both?
Both.
Because I think it seems like you've been exposed to such hectic shit from such a young age that it must be hard for you to be shocked by anything, right?
It's definitely that.
Things would not. I can't imagine would phase you as much. But is it harder to trust people, or what? I don't know. How do you think it's fucked you up?
I mean, talk to my therapist. Come on. It did a lot of toughening up for me. I have a lot of perspective that a lot of people wouldn't have.
100%.
Yeah, especially in high school. Because I went to a private school in the eastern suburbs. Because
Wow.
my mum married my
And you've got
stepdad.
this fucking upbringing. Wow.
And I was like, I moved to Mossman when I was 10. And I was just like, I can't explain to you. I'm not like you guys how not from here I am.
Were you like the hectic alternative girl at school?
Yeah.
Yeah.
That's exactly what
All
I
right,
was.
well.
That's exactly what I was. And I was also sort of like
the shoe fits, right?
exactly. And I was also sort of like drama nerd.
Okay.
Which is really funny because they were like, yeah, she's kind of scary, but also like she's performing an assembly. It's quite a juxtaposition there.
Great at improv as well.
Yeah, exactly. That's what I'm saying. Yeah, it fucked me up in the way that, I think I'd freak out instability. I've never lived more than, in one house for more than 6 months in my life. And if you see my car, it's like, everyone who gets in my car is like, are you living here? And I'm like, I've always, because I moved every 6 months, every couple months. I've always lived. My older sisters, my dad wasn't their dad. Their dad was the one who had all the other kids. They were 16 years older than me, so I lived at their houses, and then at my mum's, and then I went to boarding school for a while. I stayed at my grandparents sometimes. I'm quite nomadic, but it has
What about
messed me up a bit.
relationships-wise? Does that...
well, that's the same thing.
Yeah.
That's the same thing, isn't
As
it?
soon as it's stability for a bit too long, you're like, there's something wrong here.
Yeah. Yeah, exactly. And everyone's like, in the lockdown happened,
Yeah.
for instance, and the TV was saying go home, and I went, go home, go to a home. I was living about 3 different places at the time, a partner's, my mom's kind of, my sister's kind of, and I was like, oh my fucking God, what am I going to do? What am I going to do? I can't settle in one place. What if they lock me up there?
Yeah, fuck.
What if I need to get out really quickly? And so I ran. I just got in my car and I went to the Snowy Mountains. I went to Jindabyne because my stepdad has a house down there. And then a month later, I called my best friend and I said, I've gone insane. And I went to Jindabyne and now I'm talking to kangaroos. I've gone absolutely barking mad.
But that was your
Because I was
decision
so
because
scared of
you were so scared about the
staying in
idea of
London.
being cooped up. Fucking hell.
Then I was like, I have to run to the countryside. I have to run. I have to run.
And did that help?
It was awesome. It was crazy. My best friend
I mean, it's insane behavior, but I kind of get the thought process,
It's also
right?
claustrophobic in the city and everyone's in their houses. Knowing that everyone's in that close proximity to each other.
Well, I mean, it fucked up a lot of people. A lot of people had some serious mental health difficulties by just being cooped up with that exact feeling, right? But they didn't I guess, have that opportunity to run away or even think to do that. They just thought, I'll try it, and then they didn't realize what they were in for.
It is insane, especially when the person I was seeing at the time was like, remember when you left for 3 months
Yeah.
out of nowhere? I was like, that was quite, I'll admit, that was quite odd. That was quite odd behavior. But I just had to go.
Yeah.
It was insane. It was me and my best friend were down in the mountains. It was kind of around the time that we weren't sure if Armageddon really was about to happen. People were punching up in supermarkets and all that. And I think my upbringing came out because I was so ready for the end of the world. It's like that thing when you're in high stakes environments, you're really bad at day to day. I'm hopeless as a day to day person. As soon as an emergency kicks in, I'm so calm. I'm so capable. And I'm like the most dependable one in the room because I can do life or death. I just can't do.
I resonate over that because my mum said to me recently, she goes, Andrew, I think you'd be great during the apocalypse, right? And what it was like a secondhand way of saying like you're shit in the
shit
in the world as it is now. But if the end of the world comes, you will rise to the occasion. But the current world, not so great.
I'll admit something. I was a little bit excited when I thought I was like, so we're at this lake retreat, like all these lake houses and Lake Jindabyne or whatever, like, and everyone's starting to kill each other in supermarkets, and there's mass graves in New York, and I'm thinking the apocalypse is happening, and so my friend's coming down. There's no one around because no one's at their holiday houses except for us and these like 2 maintenance guys at the resort, and I was like, they've got bows and arrows here. We got to train up. And she was like, you're going really crazy. And I was
started digging a bunker.
Yeah. I was like, this is.
Started booby trapping the
Doomsday
area.
prepping, if not anything else, it's just a fun hobby. I was a bit let down that it didn't quite get that we were all back at work.
I feel like you were ready to rise to the occasion.
I was ready to roll for a second.
Yeah. It's weird. Like I was locked up pretty much that same 4-month period of the Sydney lockdown. And so, I mean, like hearing people that just had such a difficult time when they just had no social interaction. And I was like in Parklea prison playing like inter prison wing touch footy at the time, and it was so social. And so I was just crazy thinking like you can be more social at that time in prison than you could in the real world.
That's also a very funny, that's the first time ever where everyone's going like, guys, it's insane. We're like prisoners, and prisoners are like,
it's like the free, it's more free in prison than the real world. Yeah, that's nuts.
That's insane.
So, how long did this kind of period of your life go for? That when you were living with your dad and going through this kind of insane behavior?
So long. Probably like all of primary school, I'd say, and then high school.
So up to about the age of 12?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. And high school, I was sort of pulling back on it a bit because I guess I was getting older. I was a bit like, you got to cut this out. And then so
you started going to a high school, was it a private school?
Yeah.
What school was that?
St. Catherine's in Waverley.
Okay, St. Catherine's?
St. Catherine's.
St. Catherine's. And so were you still alternating your time between both your mum and your dad at that time?
No. So I actually ended up I was living with my older sister, which I've done for a lot of my life. She's awesome and is very like dependable and is a point of stability. And
what's her name?
Brooke. And then I ended up. She had a son. My other sister was.
Sorry, how many siblings you got?
So I have 2. They're twins.
Yeah.
Their dad has a lot, and they're sort of my siblings too, even though we don't have the same mum or dad as each other, but we've all grown up around each other. Yep. We're all stuck with each other. My sisters both have kids. Like I was 6 when my niece was born, so a 6-year age gap. Her and I basically grew up as siblings as well. Mm-hmm. And then when I was 12, Denzel, my nephew, was born. So it's like there's no traditional family, structure.
And who was paying for you to go to a private school?
My stepdad. My mum remarried a beautiful man.
Okay.
Who put me through school. Yeah, he's a pretty nice guy. And so then I had this like crazy tumultuous life, and then Alan was like, we should go I've got a house in Canada. We can go like to the snow every year if you want. And I was like, yeah, I would like that. Thank you. That would be awesome.
Wealthy stepdad that's putting you through private school, and you got the crackhead dad on the other side.
It was
Wow.
insane.
That's a
It was crazy.
that's a contrast and a half.
Yeah. And I was like, I had such a, like, I didn't really know what I was for a long time. And I still sort of, I'm like, people ask, like, where are you from? Where did you grow up? In order to try and pinpoint
How
who
long
you
you
are.
got? Yeah. It's like
And I'm like, no, you won't be able, because if I say Mossman, that's not who I am. If I just say Bondi, you're not even going to grasp that. Like, everywhere. I grew up everywhere. Yeah. But then boarding school, all of a sudden. I'm living at my school for 3 years, which was fun, but insane because that is like jail
yeah.
in a weird, like, just in the social constructs. Like, we were like, by year 9, we're making the year 7s fight.
Yeah. Well, I boarded at school as well, and so that's
Right.
why I was like,
God,
there's a
that's
lot of
a
similarities.
friend
I was like, this, when I went to prison, I was like, this feels a bit familiar.
Right. I didn't want to, seem like I was taking the piss, but, you know.
Yeah, very familiar.
It's really similar.
Yeah, I told my uncle about like my time in prison. He goes, "That sounds just like the army," you know.
Yeah.
So I think
It's
that
just
there are
structures,
any of
yeah.
those. Yeah.
It's
So-
boarding school was absolutely insane because it's all the country girls, a lot of Indigenous girls, a lot of international girls, and it was like I remember the first night I stayed there. So during the weeknights, they had like assigned seating, so you'd get a randomized table of different girls from different grades, just to like mix it up a bit. And I didn't really understand why that was that important until I stayed there on a weekend for my first night, and I stopped, and it literally looked like something out of a prison movie because how everyone was seated were like racially segregated, and I was
Wow.
like, oh, I know that. I mean, I guess I feel weird about going and sitting with those white girls because I know for a fact they're really racist.
And all sitting there with shivs, ready to fucking rock.
Yeah.
But were they? There was actual like dislike and animosity between different?
Not like dislike, but I guess it's
Just
like,
social, just social cliques.
Well, it's like you've got yeah, I guess like these white girls from the country whose parents are really racist. And then the Indigenous girls who hate them. And then the international girls, like a lot of girls from Hong Kong, and like some other places like Papua New Guinea and like Fiji and stuff. And they sort of ostracized by both of these other two groups. It was a crazy thing to watch, especially being someone who's like, you know, I think I grew up pretty exposed to a lot of different people, and I was, you know, my dad was both my parents were pretty lefty. They were like, you know, very like love everyone and stuff, and so I'm sort of trying to mediate between these. Everyone's being racist towards everyone.
Yeah, I mean,
Oh my god!
it was much simpler kind of group structure at my school. Was just you know, based on your hobbies. Really, it was the jocks and the nerds and like you know the everything in between were broken up more by their interests than you know what they look like or where they came from.
Yeah, and like people that run boarding houses, that's a warden. That's a warden. It's like these bitter old ladies with these big like literally keys, like big ring of keys.
Just hear them jingling down the stairs.
Yes, it's so ominous. And yeah, I think I spent my entire 3 years there on
So was that
wash-up duty.
was that like year 7, 8, and 9? What years were you?
Would have been year
there?
8, 9, and 10.
8, 9, and 10. Okay.
And then, so I was seeing my dad a little bit sporadically off and on throughout then. But
And
he sort of,
what-
once you get older, you just can't live like that anymore. You get a bit crazy.
I mean, did he remain relatively the same during this period, or did he
Got
have?
a lot worse.
Okay.
Like, just not really with it anymore. He used to be, the thing that broke everyone's heart about someone like him was he could have done anything. Like, he was dux of his school. He sort of ended up in into drugs because he was so clever and interesting, and sort of he grew up in Albury Wodonga, oldest of 7, big Italian family, and he was like super switched on, super interesting, and he sort of like, again, I take everything he ever said to me I take with a grain of salt because the stories would, you know, who knows what's real and what's fake.
The tall tales.
But like, you know, I know for a fact that they were, you know, him and his friends were hanging out with like some, you know, pretty cool people back in like the 70s, 80s, and he said like the person who the band Creedence Clearwater Revival, the guy from that was the first person who ever put heroin in his arm. It's like, oh, I think he was just so young, got swept up in like this like cool scene in Melbourne.
And just couldn't get back out of it.
Yeah, and then just he had bipolar, and it's one of those things where it's like, oh, it's just luck of the draw. Some people can do it for a few years, put it down, and some people are just stuck forever.
Yeah,
which is pretty crazy.
Did he ever have a job when you?
Yep. He drove a forklift.
Okay. Yeah.
Off his head on Endone, operating a forklift for Corporate Express.
It's like a recipe for disaster. A heroin junkie driving a forklift.
Yeah.
But.
Yep. And then he worked at he had a family. We had a family friend who had a wheatgrass company. Do you ever remember those trays of grass that used to be at juice shops?
At Boost Juice, I remember they used to sell those horrible wheatgrass shots.
Yeah. The people that made those, he used to do that.
Used to do what?
Like chop it up and
make the wheatgrass.
Juice it.
Okay.
And sell the trays of wheatgrass to juice places and all of that.
It's a random job.
It's a random job. So he, one of his best friends in the world was the lady who ran the company. The craziest thing that ever happened, that was towards the end of his life, his last job, I guess. And I have a joke about it, but the story behind it is like very, very real. Is his body was so messed up from everything he was putting into it.
What was he doing other than heroin?
I guess just like painkillers like Endone and stuff. Yeah. I assume towards the end he was probably ice and stuff, whatever he could get his hands on. I didn't have much contact with him I probably saw him like once every couple months, once every 6 months in the last 2 years, because I was like, get it together.
This is when you were around year 9, year 10?
No, this would have been I was probably like end of high school.
Okay.
I think he overdosed after my first year of uni. Oh, just before my last year of uni. And again, it was this thing of like, I'd always been prepared for it to happen. He'd been in comas for 6 months at a time in St. Vinny's, and they were doctors were always like, he's like, you should really prepare her. He's not going to make it. And my mom would be like, he might not make it. I was like, he'll make it. He's not going to leave us alone. You think he's going to let us have a moment of peace? He's going to come back. And then he did every time.
Until he didn't.
And then it was like, oh, God, he's really gone. Which was, just insane to me, because I was like, oh, my God, like, how did this happen?
Do you remember where you were when you found out?
Yep, I was at my house, my mum's house in Balmoral Beach, and 2 police start walking along the corridor towards our house, and I freak out because I'm 20 and I don't know what I've been up to, and I'm like, oh my God, what have I done?
You think it was about you?
I thought I'd done something. I was like, where have I been? Who have I been around? What have I done? What have I not told mum? What's my story? Shit. Which is like,
calm down.
That's the nature versus nurture of the criminal families. I wasn't a criminal. I'm still like, where am I going?
Yeah.
Where is it? I'm putting the cash in the freezer. I'm freaking out. And they were like, and then as soon as they opened the door, they were like, oh, it's about Marty Pierce. And I just went like,
what's he done this time?
I knew exactly what it was, because they'd never come, I'd never had police come to me before.
You knew that he was dead?
I knew in a second, and my reaction wasn't like, I didn't burst into tears or anything. I just went like, and they sort of looked at me like, and I was like, oh, you don't understand. This is like.
I mean, you never know how you're going to react, and particularly when you've had so many times where you thought that it was going to be that time. I can't. You're not going to have just a normal reaction when it's something sudden and unexpected,
Absolutely. And I think I grieved his death in the high school years, because I saw him
before he died
completely vanish. Like the last couple times I saw him, he was completely incoherent. I couldn't get a sentence out of him, and he just received a bipolar diagnosis because he'd overdosed another time, and then the hospital were like, we've seen you here every 6 months for 10 years, man, like you got to do something. And I was really excited to see. I agreed to see him because he had this diagnosis. I was like, okay, maybe things are going to be different, because I also around that time was starting to, I was like, oh, I have bipolar. like I was like, oh my God, whatever he's got, I've got, don't I? Damn it. And so I wanted to talk to him about it. Because I guess we sort of almost got diagnosed at the same time. And
So wait, so you do have bipolar?
yeah.
Yeah.
And so it was really interesting to be like,
And so what you got diagnosed, what, when you were at uni?
Mhm.
Uni years? So
Mhm.
what, you were like 20?
yeah, 21.
Yeah.
Yeah. And yeah, it was really interesting. I just wanted to talk to him about it. And then he sits down, he goes, they reckon I've got bipolar. I think they're barking mad. And I was like, that's who is barking mad. It's them, isn't it? He's insane. I tell this joke on stage, but he used to take me to the pool and play the game Marco Bipolar with me.
What the fuck?
Marco Polo. And I used to be screaming out, bipolar, in the pool,
God.
wondering why no one wanted to play with me.
Fucking hell.
So it was almost like this cruel joke had come back and haunted the both of us. I was like, well, now we're both
It's
got
a
this.
self-fulfilling prophecy, yeah.
You've made a dumb game, and now we've
Same.
both got an incurable mood disorder. Jesus. It's pretty insane.
You say it 10 times and it becomes true.
That's right. Oh. Fucking hell. It was insane.
So you'd gotten to this point where you'd already basically said goodbye to him in your mind before you found out.
Exactly. I was like, oh, the person that raised me isn't there anymore. They're gone. So I think it was almost a bit of a relief when he died. I was like, it put an end to this like miserable existence that he was living. Because I was like, man, this isn't you. Like, you're so smart. He wrote a book when he was in jail that I never got to see, but he used to like make me storybooks from like, he'd just buy paper and just start illustrating and writing.
When did he spend time in prison?
Right before I was born.
Okay. Yeah.
I think he did 5 years.
Do you know what it was for?
For dealing drugs.
For dealing, yeah.
I don't exactly know. But yeah, that would have been, I guess maybe like 2 years. He would have gotten out like maybe a year or two before I was born.
Yeah.
And yeah, it was like he was super, super smart. And so then looking at this like very like pathetic existence, when I found out he died, I was like, it's over. It's almost like he was like put to rest, put down.
Did you feel like it was like
old dog.
him being put out of his misery?
Yeah, absolutely. Because I was like, oh my God, like, it just felt like he went off. Like we missed the point where it was going to get better, and it was like, well, now you're just in pain. I can't be. It's too painful for me to be around you. It's too painful for you to be around you. You hate yourself. I hate you. I don't hate you, but like I hated seeing him because it was just like, oh man, like get it together.
Do you think that experience affected your outlook on drugs or your own choices with drug use?
Hell yeah. Absolutely. I've got a pretty hard no line with any type of like opiate. I don't wish to I reckon I should just play it safe a little bit, because he basically he never had a problem with alcohol, any kind of other things. He did everything and he abused everything back in the day, but it was very much that he was like, once I took that, I was like, he knew his life was over forever. Yeah. So I'm like, even if I get an operation, I'm like, don't you put me on anything, please, just let's play it safe.
Because I know, for me, I love drugs, but I was like, I'll never do, and I got addicted to them, right? Yeah. But I was like, I'll never do heroin or ice because I know if I try them, I'll probably fucking love them.
Yeah,
and then
that's it.
It's a slippery slope. I don't know if I'll ever be able to stop. So I knew enough to not ever try those. Yeah.
It doesn't completely, exactly like you were saying, like you still manage to become addicted to drugs in some type of way. It's wild to me how I'm not completely straight edge. And I, like everyone around me was like, just assumed that maybe I would be after seeing this go on for so long, and I'm not. And especially like I have ADHD as well, and getting put on stimulants when I was like 17.
So ADHD and bipolar.
Yeah, double whammy.
Jeez.
Yeah.
Sounds like a recipe for wanting to definitely do drugs,
Well, that's it. It's like the statistics is crazy. Like children of addicts are 8 times more likely to be addicts themselves.
ADHD people are very, very high chance of being addicted or ending up in prison, and then bipolar as well.
50% of people abuse something.
So you're fucked.
I'm doing the math, and I'm
like,
going, oh.
It's 99.9% chance I'm going to do drugs.
Yeah, great.
Like, might as well just do it.
Yeah, great.
But fuck, yeah. So
it's this crazy thing of going like, oh, great. Well, what will I do about that then? I was like, do I stay away from all of it forever? Do I become like do I have a normal life? And then the curveball of ADHD, and they go like, oh, we're going to put you on meth, basically. We're going to put you on meth.
Mm-hmm.
And then they put me on the meth. And as soon as I took it, I was like, fuck, I can understand why people have a problem. Like.
So what were you on? Dexies or Ritalin?
It's like Vyvanse, which is like dexamphetamine.
Yeah.
But it's a slow release one.
Yeah, okay.
And they put me on 70 milligrams, which is the highest legal dosage of it. And it like all my hair fell out. My appetite completely.
Your hair?
My hair fell out.
What?
It just was coming out in clumps in the shower. It affects my body so much. Like if I don't take it for a day, anyone that's around me when I'm off my medication, it's like painful for me, for everyone else, because I'm like clammy. My like body hurts. Like I'm like, feels like.
Are you a shit? Are you?
I'm like going through withdrawals.
Yeah, and do you act irritable? Like you?
So irritable, and I like have no energy, but I can't. But I'm really like silly. I love. There's been a few times where I haven't been able to have my meds, like I've left them at home or something, and I've had to do gigs, and that's been awesome because I'm ridiculous. But I like can't stop eating. Like cannot stop eating because food brings so much dopamine, and when you don't have the dopamine that your body lacks, I just got like, oh my god, I just will order like 8 wedges. I'll be like, I need it right now, and like it's so intense. But yeah, Vyvanse is one hell of a drug.
Wow, because I used to have. When I was 16, I started being medicated for my ADHD that I was diagnosed with when I was like 8. But it wasn't affecting my studies at the time. So,
right.
So it only became an issue when I was like 15 or 16. I said to my parents, like, fuck, like I can't sit in class without I can't concentrate on anything. And they're like, oh yeah, guess what? You got ADHD. You've had it for your whole life. So I started getting medicated. I started having 8 dexamphetamine tablets a day, and
that's a lot.
Yeah, it's a lot.
That's a lot.
And so I found like a form of speed. I would just sit in class. I could concentrate again, and it kind of mellowed me out. But I had like no appetite, which I hated because I'm an eater. I love food.
Me too.
And then I found that I was like a zombie. And at night I couldn't sleep because my mind was racing. Like, hey Andrew, remember that time you were digging a sandpit when you were 3 with your old neighbor? Like just shit like that. And I was like, go to sleep, brain. But I would just be racing. And so I fucking hated it. So I stopped taking the meds as soon as I finished high school. And then I became a massive drug dealer. So maybe that was a bad idea. But I definitely remember that was like such an intense drug experience. And that was like legal. Like I was prescribed to you.
As soon as I take one every day, and every single day I go, there's no, we're going to, in like 50 years, it's going to be one of those things where we look back, how we look back at like the 1950s on some of the things that we were taking. We go like, God, we didn't know.
That was a bad idea, yeah.
We're going to look back at ADHD medication and go, what the fuck was that?
Yeah.
I can't believe we all just took that because it's meth. It's literally meth.
I started taking modafinil, which is like off-label. You say that you need it for like shift work here, and you can get it off-label. And I found that a better ADHD drug for me because I could concentrate and I had less of the side effects of dexamphetamines in terms of screwing up my appetite. But they call it like the limitless drug, But I found that
you stay awake for long enough, and I got myself into a bit of a situation last year. Where I think my biggest, people ask me, do you reckon you have the addictive trait? And I'm like, yes, but not in the way that my dad did. I think I've channeled it into like, I guess like performing and like writing, like creating stuff, but not in like, I just love to perform. I'm like, productivity wise, if I could just never sleep, I wouldn't. If I could just never be at home, I wouldn't. I would just keep being out and doing gigs and being at rehearsals and working on things and blah 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 blah. And
Until you drop dead.
I almost did. I had a seizure.
Fuck.
Yeah.
Holy shit.
Yep. I had a seizure, and they don't know why.
When was this?
I know why. This was about April last year.
Okay.
2021.
Yeah.
And my schedule was insane. I was teaching 3 dance classes a night, gigging every single night. I'd spend like 10 a.m. till 2 p.m. in the recording studio. I was like making a song, I guess, at that time. And then I'd go and see my friends at night until ridiculous hours. So I was sleeping like 2 hours a night for about 2 weeks. Some nights I'd just be like, I know I'm going to be even more tired if I go to sleep right now. I may as well just stay up.
And so were you just surviving on the medication you were taking, or were you like doing drugs as well?
I wasn't doing any drugs.
Yeah.
I was just like, I was basically relying on the fact that stimulants will keep you awake if you're on them.
But hold on, so you're bipolar. So was it also this sounds like manic behavior?
Yeah, it was a complete manic episode where I just went, everyone says you'll die if you don't sleep, and I'm just not buying it.
Were you medicated? Are you medicated for bipolar?
I am, and I was not at the time.
Right. Okay. Now it's starting to make sense.
I went off my meds, off my mood stabilizers.
So you're on the ADHD meds, but you weren't on the bipolar meds.
I just stopped taking them because I couldn't. Didn't think they were doing anything.
Now
Turns out, when you stop taking them, you notice what they were doing, which was stopping you from doing that.
Yeah, because when you describe that, I'm like, if you're not doing that without like illegal drugs, then that just sounds. And I was like, hold on, that sounds manic. Hold on, I forgot. Yeah, that's. And so, what happened with the seizure?
Where
were you?
I want to hear a story. I was.
Where were you?
I was in bed with someone, and I'd never had a seizure before, right? So I was driving that night. I literally said, "I'm not." I didn't even. I had a birthday party on that night, and then a few of my friends were meeting up at another bar, and I was literally like, "I'm so exhausted. I haven't slept in days. I don't really feel like going out and drinking. I have to work the next day. I'm gonna drive tonight." You try and be a responsible human, and look what happens. Anyway, so I was seeing someone. I was in their bed, and so apparently it's a very common side effect, even if you do have like epilepsy and you seize all the time, to experience denial about it. However, I'd really never had a seizure before, so all of a sudden this person is freaking out, and I'm going, "What's up?" And they're like, "You just had a seizure," and I'm like, "What?" I think I'd know if I had a seizure. Just accidentally gaslighting them.
Yeah.
Just accidentally manipulating them because
got
I really
memory,
didn't know.
You got no memory of it?
Zero. I had 2 complete, and like I was like, I think I'd know, and they were like, that was unmistakably a seizure, and I was like, I think maybe you're anxious.
That's got to be a traumatic experience for them. Like,
well, they were like, she's gonna die.
Yeah.
Here.
And she doesn't believe me.
And like for someone to shake and foam from the mouth for like a minute on end, and then to go like, "Why are you freaking out?" is crazy.
I would have had to film it, like, fuck, just to be like, "This is you, fucking 2 seconds ago."
Well, and I'm pretty like, because I spent a lot of time in hospitals growing up. I'm pretty like I'm like the opposite of a hypochondriac. I'm like, oh no. So they're like, "We're going to hospital," and I was like, "No, just stop." I'm just like hanging up the hospital, like the ambulance calls, being like, "That's really unnecessary. I'm fine." And I got in my car and I drove home.
Let me just have a seizure in peace. Yeah.
Literally, I drove home because I didn't think I'd had one. And then I'm in the car.
Yeah.
And I'm going like, my body kind of hurts. And then I'm going like, my jaw really hurts. Yeah. Why does my jaw hurt? And then I realize I go to step out of the car and I can't extend my hamstring at all. And I'm like, I've had a seizure. I've had a seizure. And then I go home. My mum goes, "We're having the floors redone. Will you help me move the couch?" And I was like, "No, I've had a seizure." She was like, "What?" And I was like, "Yeah." She's like, "Well, what are you doing here?" And I was like, I'm here.
Good question,
I'm
Mum.
here.
Let's not get carried away. It was just 2 mild seizures.
It was just 2 huge seizures, eyes roll back in head, foaming at the mouth. It's chill. I'd never had one ever again.
that you know of. How do you know?
Yeah, what if
Have
I'm
you ever had any
alone?
muscle cramps
Well,
and you're like, oh shit, maybe I did have it again?
That's a scary thing. But I was terrified of it happening again. I couldn't drive for 6 months.
Did you go to the hospital to talk to them?
Yeah, and I had to be there overnight.
Yeah, okay.
And everyone,
So I just had a seizure.
they did all this stuff. They screened me for everything. They put EEGs, ECGs, blood tests, everything tests, whatever. They were like, we can't find anything. And so yeah, and then I couldn't drive for 6 months, which as I've just told you, the urge to get up, pack my things up, and drive into the middle of the country was revoked.
Yeah,
It said,
fuck.
"Listen, you silly bitch. No, now you're a bus girl."
Because you have a seizure, that's a rule, is it?
Well, because they don't really know much about it, and if it's like you don't want it to happen behind the wheel and you kill someone or yourself. So yeah, my license was suspended for 6 months. I didn't even do anything wrong. Well, I didn't disobey a traffic law or anything.
Wait, so I mean, what period of time was this? This was from
2021 lockdown, so it wasn't too bad.
Yeah.
We did go into lockdown about like a few weeks after.
Yeah.
So that wasn't too bad.
By the time when you ran away to,
So that was 2020.
That was 2020. Okay, all right. I was just double checking my lockdowns.
Yeah.
Okay, all right. I'm with you.
Yep.
Yeah.
So yeah, one, I went away from everyone, and one, I was stuck in the house with my parents at 22 years old.
That sounds much worse.
It was so bad.
Yeah.
It was so bad.
So, I mean, so you're on the bipolar medication now, right?
Mm-hmm.
Because I mean,
Because
yeah,
I guess
it just sounds like
it was
insane and exhausting. Going through
the value of those meds were proved to me by the little seizure incident.
But are you even conscious when you're doing that? Like that you were in a manic, like, just you're aware of it? Yeah.
Because there was also an incident about a week before where I reckon my body was starting to shut down, but I couldn't take it seriously.
Yeah.
Like it was really because of my upbringing, in moments of crisis, I sort of surrender and I just go like, well, what are we gonna do? I'm quite calm. So I think there was a moment where I was, I think I got up to pee in the morning and then I couldn't feel my legs or my arms and I was like, oh my God, I'm gonna die like Elvis on a toilet. This is crazy. And then I went and I sat out on my couch and I'm pretty sure I almost died. Just from exhaustion. I wasn't eating enough. I basically was living solely on dexamphetamines. And my work at that time, I was teaching dance. It was pretty like physically exhausting as well. And yeah, I remember texting my friend and being like, I think I might die. I think I took a selfie and sent it to them. And I looked really bad. And I was like, guys, I'm going to die and I look ugly. Okay. I have the photo. It's
That's
really
the worst
crazy.
when you die ugly.
Literally, I was like, someone's going to find, some hot paramedic is going to find me and I'm going to be so ugly.
Start doing your makeup, your lip.
Yeah, I'm like, quick. I'm going to have to die like this.
So
I'm going to die like that.
I've lived with a guy with bipolar before and like, so I mean, people I think have a little bit of an understanding about the depression part of it, that they can go through massive lows, but also like I've seen him in manic mode where he like walked from Manly to Surrey Hills barefoot and then like just sat at home like for like 4 days. Like it was like 5 a.m. He'd just be in the living room like playing his guitar and like wouldn't sleep for 5 days, like no drugs, just high on his own supply.
It's wild.
And that's freaky in itself. Like the manic is freaky, can be freakier than the depression maybe.
It's so much worse. It's so much more like, I mean, apart from the obvious, it's a lot more dangerous, especially like, you can develop delusions and stuff. You start especially when you're not sleeping.
Yeah.
Yeah, of course. Like even with no mental illness, everyone is like a few days away from hallucinating.
Yeah, well,
it's such a crazy thing.
I would have these coke benders sometimes where I'd go like 5 days without sleep, and like, yeah, my mind was like fragile by then, and I, would just have paranoia, or there'd be just things like, where I'd have delusions, right? And it's like, just from it was mostly from just a lack of sleep.
Just exhaustion will
Yeah.
do it. It's I used to.
Brain just gets tired.
I never took it seriously. They say like you'll die of sleep deprivation before you die of dehydration or anything like that. It's so
crazy, yeah.
true. Your organs just start shutting down. Like when I'm really really sleep deprived, there'll be like moments where I just stop being able to like feel my body at all, or
That's freaky.
or you go to grab something and it's like your aim is off. Like you're not quite grabbing it and you'll be like, oh, like when I'm trying to walk upstairs, when
Yeah,
I'm really
shit.
sleep deprived, I'll miss a stair and I'm like, go to bed.
So, I mean, is there any risk that you could have a seizure again if
If I
don't-
carry on like a pork chop
Yeah.
again, maybe.
Yeah, if you run yourself ragged, I guess. It's just,
Yeah, it was a
Yeah.
big lesson in like, I guess I have to sleep. To me, it just felt like I have to sleep every night. I swear I just did that. I swear I literally do that every day.
Wow. I mean, I love sleep,
Right. I like it once I'm doing it, but it feels like a waste of time. Again, I think I'm
Like a
addicted
chore
to.
when you've got other shit that
productivity.
you want to do. Yeah.
I think having ADHD, affects that a lot because you feel like you take long times to do things.
Mm.
I feel like I get so distracted that something that might take everyone else an hour might take me 5 hours. And so I'm like, I don't have time to sleep.
Yeah.
I got shit to do and I'm pedaling uphill.
100%. Yeah. There's times where takes me 8 hours to just do like one 15-minute task.
God,
I'm
it's
like,
insane.
Fuck, what's wrong with me? Yeah.
Cleaning. Have you ever seen someone with ADHD clean a house? I'll have like a dustpan and broom and a dish in my hand while I'm making the bed. And I'm like, Eden,
What am I doing? Yeah.
just one. Just do one. Why are you holding dishes and making the bed? Like, it can't be like this.
Yeah.
It's
Yeah.
ridiculous.
Or I've put the milk back in the pantry because I'm like,
Where things end up is insane.
I'm like, where the fuck was I just a second ago? Oh, fuck.
My phone is in the fridge all
Yeah.
the time. Crazy.
That's why when the cops raided my house, I was like, well, these drugs, where do they come from?
Yeah.
I got ADHD. I was zoning out. They're not mine. This isn't even my house.
I'd be so scared to be a drug dealer with ADHD. I'd be like, I lost it. I'm so sorry. Like, I lose everything. It's not just this.
Yeah, I'd misplace big piles of cash sometimes. When I put that 40 grand.
That's bad.
Oh, yeah, there it is in the freezer. Yeah.
Right.
So you said that you had your stepdad was also a crim, right?
No, so not my stepdad,
your
my sister's dad.
Okay. So did you have any interactions with him?
Yeah, lots. I mean, he was in jail for most of, I guess, my teenage years. I think he got out of jail when I was, like 18-ish.
Yep.
And then immediately started having more kids.
And so what was he in for? Drugs?
Cocaine dealing.
Yeah.
And he's just a bit of a character. I remember at my dad's, he knew my dad really well. They all knew each other. They all, like this whole big group of people that sort of had all of us in this family all met at a rehab in like 1980 or something. And so they've all known each other for 40 years by this point. And so, Ron, my sister's dad, at my dad's funeral, he's like, well, don't worry about it, darling. He made me this ring, which all of his kids have. And he goes, don't worry about it, darling. You want a mine now? I was like, Ron, name all of your kids.
Yeah, fuck.
And then we'll talk. I don't know if you can take on another one at this point. You've still got ones coming out.
So your mum had kids with, had you with your dad, and then
had my sisters with
Ron.
Had my sisters with Ron,
and then
16 years later had me with my dad, and then got remarried to my stepdad. And they don't have any kids together.
But so she hooked up with two bad dudes, right? And then finally did all right in the end.
Has the most, like, he's an architect. He's like, he reminds me of a little turtle. He just swims and rides his bike every day and skis, and he's like a little bit like spectrum-y in some ways. He's just the cutest little man ever. He's so like gentle, and she's insane too. Because you think of a woman that can, withstand these crazy men. Because us kids, we had the crazy side of it, but she had to like deal with the bad side of these guys.
Yeah, well, I mean, it sounds
They
like
were
there's
pretty
a reason
insane.
why she gave him the flick in the end, right?
Yeah. And those guys don't give up easy.
Yeah.
Those guys are not the type of guys to be like, yeah, you take the kids.
Yeah.
They're like, no.
Yeah, I'm better off without you, No,
Oh, yeah,
saying,
no.
where the fuck-
Like, the amount of times I got surprise picked up from school by dad. Come to find out that was not arranged. Lots. So, yeah, she's pretty highly strung. And I had to explain it to her the other day because she has like crippling anxiety now. She's a complete mum. If you're listening to the pod, full blown hypochondriac, like health anxiety through the roof. And I'm going like, how does a woman who survives the unimaginable, terrified by the thought of all of these like physical ailments that aren't real? She's been on antibiotics.
And
for
what?
years.
That's a newish development, is it?
I think what I put it down to, I guess I've talked to therapists about it. I basically go to therapy for her because that's the one doctor she will not go to.
Yeah.
She's at every, heart specialist, ear, nose, throat, head, shoulders, knees, toes specialist in Sydney. Will not go to a psych. I think because they will tell her, stop going to the other doctors. There's nothing wrong with you. You're quite healthy. But I said to her, like, when your life is in emergency, like literal life or death for so many years, and then all of a sudden you're little Mossman housewife, your body doesn't know what to do. It goes like,
start looking for problems.
am I still going to die? And I think she started being like, I'm dying. I'm like, no, you're in a safe space for the first time in your life. Because she was 20 when she had my sisters. And she's 60 now, I guess.
Yeah.
She's 60? Am I making that up? I think she is. And that's 40 years of freaking the fuck out all of the time about where are my kids, where are their dads, who is everyone alive?
And now things are peaceful and there's tranquility and doesn't know what to do with herself.
She's fallen apart. And I think that is what happens is like you I guess, you're not equipped for normal life.
Yeah. Well,
it's like, how do you start? It's really funny seeing her talk to like ladies at the beach club. I'm like,
why?
I know who you are.
Yeah.
You are
doing the small talk thing.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And like her friends will be like, oh, my son's doing this and my daughter's doing this, and like, we don't know if we want to go to Winona or Queenwood. And I'm like, it's crazy that my mum is like sitting around being like, true. I'm like, do they know who you are and what you've been up against?
Yeah, do you know your backstory?
And they don't.
No, of course. She's not going to be volunteering that.
No. God, no. Because they are quite judgmental. Growing up there, I had a lot of kicks under the table when we were out at lunch with her friends because I'd be like, I think I had a little bit of a streak in me of wanting to shatter these women's delusions because they're very like, don't talk about the eastern suburbs. They don't even want to talk about the eastern suburbs. That's too out there for them. They're like, the West. Don't talk about the West. Like, they're
fucking hell.
You
wanted to shock them. Yeah.
I was like, yeah. I really wanted to poke and prod them a bit growing up. I still do sometimes.
So are you still? Do you live with your mum now?
No.
Yeah. Okay. But you still talk all the time?
Yeah, all the time. Oh my god, can't get rid of her. We talk all the time. She's she's going pretty well. I think she'll be fine.
And where do your sisters live?
One of them is so Hayley is in Queensland. She's actually the head nurse at a rehab.
Okay.
Which is quite telling.
Yeah.
She struggled with substance abuse growing up too. She was in AA by the time she was like 22.
Yeah, okay.
24, maybe my age.
Yeah. And
Corbin, my niece, was like a baby and went in the rehab with her, one of those rehabs that you can take kids into with you. And then she went back and did her HSC and put herself through nursing school and is now, like head nurse at a rehab, which is kind of cool. And then
is she with the father of her? No. Yeah.
Hayley got his name was Blake. She had she had a tattoo there that said Blake. then she changed it to bloke, then she changed it to broke. So that's how Haley's going. And then Brooke.
I'd like to change it, please, from Blake to bloke.
Yeah.
And then
I'd like to change it from bloke to broke.
Wow.
Just really parallels the trajectory.
I wonder if it was the same tattoo guy all 3 times.
Probably was. It's insane.
This is a downward slope here, yes. Please don't judge me, tattoo guy.
Yeah. And then my other sister, Brooke, has been with the same guy since she was 18 years old. So he's basically my brother as well because I've known him as long as I've known her, really. And they've known each other since they were babies. And she has a 10-year-old son, and they live in Maroubra. And
Cool.
she's like the black sheep of the family in the way that she's really normal.
Isn't that funny? You're the weirdo because you're not weird. Yeah.
She's like, she just cracks the whip and tells us all we're insane.
Well, I mean, from the sounds of it, she might be right.
She's incredibly right. She's incredibly right.
Right?
Yeah, someone's got to do it.
But I've always found crazy people far more relatable and interesting.
Absolutely.
Right?
Absolutely.
Fun hangs.
Absolutely.
Until you're cooped up with them during COVID.
I was thinking about doing a stint in rehab just to get a change of scenery during lockdown. I was like, I'm just going to admit myself for a holiday.
At least you'd have some people to interact with, right?
Yeah.
So how long have you been doing comedy now for?
Oh, gosh. When did I start? End of 2018. So I did 2019, 2020, 21, 20. Gosh. Old. I'm old. 4 years now.
And what was the kind of catalyst that got you into it?
My first 5 was a year after my dad died. I just did the girls' room back when it was called What She Said. There was like a newcomers night. I'd just finished uni. I did a musical theatre degree, and I hated musical theatre because I still felt claustrophobic. It felt like too rigid. They were saying there's not enough room for change in acting and theatre yet. They still want you to be very marketable and very like figure out your typecast and stick to that. And I was like,
lean into it instead of just figuring out your own voice.
Figure out what you want to do. Yeah. So I was getting quite agitated with theatre towards the end of my degree, and so I just.
But you finished the degree?
Yeah.
It's admirable.
Yeah, it was pretty. Yeah, that's awesome. But yeah, I was pretty like agitated with it, and so I just did a open mic. I had 5 minutes, and it was just about my dad dying. And
was it funny?
It went really well. The first one was awesome, and I was like, I'm a big dog.
Fuck yeah. Eat a dick comedy. Dude, I'm here, bitch.
And for a room like that where people want to see comedy, like you can kind of write stuff like that. And then I think
100%.
I got booked off the back of that because I met like some comics that were like sort of took me under their wing because I was pretty much like the youngest girl in comedy then. And I'm still one of the youngest girls in comedy now. There's not a lot of young girls starting, like really young, because I would have been like 20.
Yeah.
And I think a few good people were like, just stick near us for a second. You're really young.
Come under our wing.
Yeah, they were like, this could end really grim for you. Some of these open micers get a bite in.
What, in terms of people getting their creep on.
Yeah, I reckon that was the intention behind a few people being like, you should probably do our rooms for a while just you don't need to. So I got to skip a lot of the cues of like the open mic.
Has that happened to you though? People being creepy?
I guess because I was around these other people, they wouldn't really do it in front of them, and it was more of a thing of like throughout the years. It's a funny thing. Like as I've gotten older, everyone's like, "Well, like Edan's like grown up now." I'm like, "Stop it, stop it."
Hey Edan,
yeah,
how
they're
you
like,
doing?
Yeah, it's like it feels like I'm of age now. It's like I was 20.
Yeah,
but yeah, they can live with it if I'm 24.
So like I hear female comics talk all the time just about like, you know, dudes being creepy, but obviously like I this is not something that I see, you know.
It's not, even if it's not creepy. Like I've never had like off the top of my head like awful experiences. It's more like people that it's like they'll maintain deniability, but they will try. It's like they'll try a little bit, and if you go like, they go like,
oh, there's a way where there's plausible deniability, right? Yeah. No, you misread it. You know, it's your fault.
Yeah. Or even if it's just like, did I catch wind of something? And then they're already scurrying away.
Scurrying
in the night.
I think that's the correct term for it.
There's an interaction when people used to find out how old I was, where they went like, oh, I feel weird now. And I was like, it's only weird if you're trying to sleep with me. It's not weird for us to be.
What? Because
I think people didn't know how. Because I think I came off a lot older than I was.
Yeah,
people used to think I was like 26.
Yeah.
I just turned 20, and so I think it was very telling of like people used to be like, that's really weird. I was like,
why
it's
is
not
it
weird to be friends with. Yeah, why is it weird? What are you up to? They'd be like, so I think that was like, funny. But now I feel like I'm still pretty young, but I carry on like I'm some old man up the back of the room.
Well, you've had a lot of you've had a lot of crazy life experiences that I think have given you age beyond your years. Or whatever the term is, right?
I think so, but comedy will do that tenfold.
Yeah, but I also think like that you've had these experiences which like I see a lot of people, young people doing comedy, and they're great at performers, but they haven't had enough time of life beating the shit out of them to I guess give them jokes, right? Like the pain to write from, and you've got that.
It's a crazy thing when people go like, oh, I probably won't get that because I'm not like marketable. Like I don't have like a story. they're like, oh, I need to go out and get some trauma. And you go, okay, go find it.
True though, right? But it's like,
get yourself in some trouble.
How do you go looking for it? Like,
how do you gain adversity?
I hope some bad shit happens to me.
It's a crazy problem to be like, I don't have enough awfulness in my past. It's funny.
But you have that advantage, right? It's like if you're gonna have like all these shitty,
have some of mine.
If you've had all these shitty experiences, I mean, it's like like when life gives you lemons, right? I mean, that's. I know, I had always wanted to do comedy, but if I had tried to do it when I was in my 20s, I would have been shit because I would have had nothing to talk about. I just would have been a bunch of, like a lot of guys, would have been a bunch of lame wank jokes and like, but it was only fucking the mess that I turned my life into, just my absolute life becoming a toilet. And that suddenly that gave me the drive and something to talk about,
Life becoming a toilet is a really funny way to word it.
Right? I was like, my life was an absolute floating turd and I was just like, fuck, like... Suddenly I was like, oh, this is some funny shit to talk about.
Yeah.
And it seems that people tend to agree. But if it wasn't for that, I would have had nothing to talk about. So